Welcome to Balli's Basics in Education and Learning. That's me.
So in the Japanese version of Donkey Kong, you play every stage in order, whereas in the North American version, it kind of skips around a little bit. We'll see that a little bit later. But for the purposes of demonstration, we'll actually be playing the Japanese version so that we can see all the different stages. And then we've got two different modes here. We've got Caravan mode and High Score mode. And both of these are really cool because they emulate the experience of standing in front of an arcade cabinet and dropping in a quarter and trying to get the highest score you possibly can in just your one run. So the high score mode and the caravan mode are pretty similar, with the exception that the caravan mode has a 5-minute time limit. Right. So the high score mode is where I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of intense action because
like Donkey Kong with leaderboards, basically.
Yeah, online leaderboards. That's a big deal. Donkey Kong has one of the most highly contested world records, one of the most well-known high scores. So I'm hoping that we see a lot of intense competition going on in there. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the later version. Again, this is using the Japanese stage order. I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. I've been watching a lot of the top Donkey Kong players play the game. And if Donkey Kong will let me, I'm going to attempt to showcase some tips and tricks that I've picked up from watching their play. And hopefully, if you master some of these things, maybe they'll get you up onto the high score leaderboard. So the first thing that I want to show is actually one of the first things here, if I can get the timing right. So right there, I was able to kind of glance some points off of that barrel that was falling down there. And the reason I was able to do that, it utilizes a quirk of the programming where you don't necessarily need to jump over an object to earn points. You can simply jump. Oh, this is going to get hairy.
Oh,
okay.
Nice. Oh,
You don't necessarily need to jump over an object to get points from it. You simply need to jump next to a dangerous object, and then if you press the control stick to the left or right at the height of that jump, you'll earn points from it. And there are a couple of places in the game where you can use that to your advantage. What I did just there showcased another trick that's actually going to be kind of hard to demonstrate. And that's, sorry. Well, we'll get another opportunity to show you right here when we get back into the game. But Donkey Kong is deviously programmed. It's a super challenging game. And one of the ways that devious programming manifests is that the chance that a barrel will travel down a ladder increases if Mario is facing or moving toward that ladder. And, I'm not going to be able to make that. This is going to be a rough one. Let's try this again. So, like I was saying, the chance that a barrel is going to travel down a ladder increases if Mario is facing or moving toward that ladder. And now armed with that knowledge, you can use it to your advantage. So you can actually, by strategically facing Mario, you can change. That one worked. Oh, no. There we go. So by strategically facing Mario, you can pretty much control the barrels, and it doesn't happen every time. And as a matter of fact, like the further you get into the game, the more your ability to influence the barrels increases. So I don't know if that one was actually me or not, but sometimes it's hard to tell. But as the difficulty increases, your ability to control the barrels increases. So in a lot of ways, for the top players, the game gets somewhat easier the further they get into the game, because they can start manipulating the barrels a little bit more. Yeah. So now we're moving on to the second stage here. This is the conveyor belt stage, in this stage, this wasn't present in the NES version of the game. The NES version is possibly the most popular port of Donkey Kong, and this stage wasn't featured. And because of the way the North American stage ordering works, there's a good chance that if you stink at Donkey Kong, you never saw this stage at all.
I had actually never seen this stage until we were working on this segment. And we saw you, so you're talking about some of the sort of deep ways to get points, but when I play Donkey Kong, I'm just trying to get to the top and save Pauline on each level. And speaking of Pauline, Don, you mentioned Mario, sort of the genesis of that name. I know that some of the other characters in this game sort of were maybe named after people you knew in your real life back in the day. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, little known fact is that my girlfriend at the time She was the reason, through her father's connection to the Far East Video Company, was the reason I got offered the consulting job. And so after we named Mario, Mr. Arakawa thought it'd be really funny to name the heroine, the female character in the game, Pauline, which was actually taken from my girlfriend's name, and so she eventually became my wife. So effectively, Pauline's named after my ex-wife.
That is so cool. That is it seems like a little bit of a Wild West back then, you know, when things were sort of just, I mean, you guys didn't know, you know, it was Donkey Kong, it was arcade cabinets. I mean, was it kind of an exciting time back then?
Yeah, it was really exciting. It was really fun because everyone was very young. We were all super energetic and very excited about the opportunities, and we all worked really, really hard. One of the funnest things I ever did, though, is I was shipping manager, warehouse manager for a shipping manager second, eventually becoming the production manager. But when I was shipping games, I was the only guy in the entire warehouse, so I got around on a skateboard. That was my mode of transportation.
That is so
to get
80s,
from the front. Yeah.
in the best way.
Yeah,
Skateboarding
exactly.
around the Nintendo warehouse by yourself, Donkey Kong cabinets. Oh, man, I love that. And Sam, it looks like you're up to some more point pressing tricks here.
Yeah, I'm up to some more shenanigans. So this is a pretty safe place to utilize that trick I was talking about earlier, where you can kind of glance points off of dangerous objects by jumping next to them and then pressing left or right on the control stick at the height of that jump. So I'm just, you know, as this flame kind of gets frozen up here, you can just kind of get points off of it. If you're good enough, you can actually do it off of the springs that are traveling here. I don't know. There we go. I got one on the spring. So I'm going to move on. Point pressing is fun, but I'm not trying to set a high score here. The springs are very, very complicated, but for right now, I'll just show you the two safe zones. So right here at the top of this ladder, a little bit to the left of it, is a safe zone. And then the second safe zone is kind of right here on the right side of this mechanism.
Nervous.
Yeah, the time is counting down. I need to go.
And I think what Sam's trying to kind of showing off here is like Donkey Kong, there's one way to play it, which is just get to the top of each stage, take the bonus points that you have left in the timer, and move on. But
right.
The way that the guys that are going for those high scores, they try to extract as many points out of each level in the time they have by doing the kind of those quirks you're talking about, like pressing points off all sorts of stuff. All right, I'm going to let you, I know you've got a sort of talking point about this stage too.
Yeah, so this is the rivet stage. So in most of the stages of Donkey Kong, the objective is pretty simple. You just need to get to Pauline at the top of the stage. But for this stage, you want to pull all of the rivets, causing all of the platforms to fall here. And the pattern that I took, so the rivets that I pulled on the left side of the screen here, I did so in a certain order. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to leave this rivet so that I could grab the hammer and still pass that area. So my objective on this stage is, if you see the central ladders here, so the one where my hammer is landing, it's kind of aligned with Donkey Kong's crotch area, if you will. So those central ladders divide the stage into two halves. And when I destroy an enemy, so long as I am on the right side of the stage when that enemy respawns, they'll always respawn on the opposite side of the stage. And because I pulled all of the rivets from the left side of the stage, now when those enemies respawn that I destroyed with the hammer, they're all trapped over there. So that was my objective, is to trap those flames on the left side of the screen. And I'm going to try and get these final two. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. This guy is camping. So the reason why I wanted to do that and try and get as safe as possible, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it, unfortunately, is that point pressing trick I was showing. I'm just going to do it. There you go. So that point pressing trick that I was showing, that where you can kind of glance points off of dangerous objects. Well, there's no more dangerous object than Donkey Kong himself. So you could actually stand up there on that top platform next to Donkey Kong and just keep earning points off of his back as long as you have time left on the timer. And that's another trick that the pros utilize, or the top players utilize when they're trying.
It's kind of amazing to me. Like, I'm learning some of this stuff for the first time. Like, some of this stuff from Sam as he's been training for this segment. Like, Don, it's kind of crazy, isn't it, to learn some of these strategies about, I mean, maybe you knew some of this stuff, but I don't know if back in the day in the arcades in 1981 people knew some of this stuff. They're just probably trying to get to the top and get the most out of their quarter.
Yeah, for the most part, it was just try to survive, get to the top, rescue Pauline. And I didn't know half the tricks you're talking about.
I think it'll be really cool when people get this in their hands to, like, you know, try some of this stuff out, you know?
Yeah. I'm hoping that by utilizing some of those tips and tricks that you can get yourself on those online leaderboards, because that's what Donkey Kong is all about. It's about earning top scores. And again, I'm really excited that this version of the game is finally releasing and getting into people's hands. And unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have for Arcade Archives Donkey Kong, but it is not all the time that we have for this segment.
What?
Because Hamster and Nintendo have something really special planned. And so we think of the Arcade Archives series as a fun way to revisit classic arcade titles. But how about meeting a classic arcade title for the very first time? And that's what we're going to be able to do with the first official North American release of the arcade version of Sky Skipper.
Sky Skipper.
And this is really exciting because, like I was saying, this game never officially released in arcades. It's a bit of a phantom, and there's no one better to tell us the story of kind of what happened with Sky Skipper than Mr. Don James. You were around during this time. Can you tell us a little bit about Sky Skipper and when it first showed up?
Well, typically when we would get a new game from our parent company, we would put it out on test. And so one day, 10 of these Sky Skipper cabinets showed up, and we put them out at various arcades, and we sat around and played the game as well. For whatever reason, we never released the game, but we kept one original Sky Skipper cabinet in our archives at Nintendo of America. And suddenly all this interest became very hot about this Sky Skipper game, this unknown game. And then we got the call to go out, dig up the game, and pull the ROMs out, copy them, and send them to Japan so they could make it available to the consumers.
That's right. So more on that point. So we're showing
actually got some slides, of what that cabinet looked like. Does that bring back some memories for you?
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting little side note for anyone who sees these games in the arcade. If you rub your hand on the side panel and it's a rough texture, that cabinet was made in the United States. If it's very smooth, it was made in Japan.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome. And you had a note. Yeah, you were able to confirm something super fascinating about the art.
Yeah, I've been asked multiple times who did the art and whether Mr. Miyamoto was ever involved with this. And I was talking to him 2 days ago, and I got him to give me permission to say, yes, he did do the art for Sky Skipper. So the mystery is now solved.
Yeah, the cabinet art on the side of Sky Skipper that was drawn by
the header, the control panel.
Can we show that one more time, that art slide? I just think it's so cool to think of Mr. Miyamoto drawing that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
He didn't program this specific game, but doing the art for it, that just kind of goes, I feel like that kind of goes back to, I'm sure back in those days, you wore a lot of hats at Nintendo over years, and Mr. Miyamoto obviously wore a lot of hats. Too.
Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, imagine him drawing that back in the day. It's so cool.
It's beautiful. I was present during the photographing of this arcade cabinet, and that's an experience I'm going to treasure for the rest of my life. That I actually got to see the last.
You got to touch the last cabinet.
Or the only
one left.
Yeah. And more on that point. So you were mentioning. So this is the only known original Sky Skipper North American arcade cabinet.
That's correct.
And the board that's inside of that arcade cabinet is the only known unmodified Sky Skipper board. And the ROMs from that board supplied the ROMs for Arcade Archives Sky Skipper.
Yep.
So truly proving the namesake of the Arcade Archives series. This one came literally
directly from those ROMs.
Yeah, from our archives. So let's go ahead and jump into the game. It's a really interesting, crazy-looking game. I think you'll see as we get into it here. Listening to that wonderful startup music. So you can see that I'm controlling this character. You might have seen it during the attract mode when that was rolling. But I'm controlling a character called Mr. U. And you might have noticed the charming little typos there, staring Mr. U and co-staring the King's family. But you can see I'm controlling Mr. U in this biplane here, and I've got a fuel meter at the top of the screen that is slowly dwindling, so I am going to need to pay attention to that. And then I've got these gorilla characters that are throwing these bombs at me while they're listening to they're jamming out on their tunes on their little headphones. This guy's going to get me. So control-wise, it's fairly simple. You've got one button that controls your turbo, so that helps you move a little bit faster, and then you've got another button that helps you drop bombs, and then you could drop bombs on these gorilla characters. And so your objective is to collect all of these kind of card suit characters, the King's family, and the order in which you collect them is going to determine your scoring. So 4 of a kind is worth the most amount of points, and then all of the same color. And the stage is complete whenever you collect all of them. So I'm going to make my way over to the other side of the screen and attempt to do that here. So this flag here that's in the center, if you touch the flag, then you can refuel, which I'll do right now because I was running on low on fuel as I was explaining things there. But the graphic style of this game is just wild. Look at it.
Yeah, is this just like a normal day at Nintendo, Don, where you're like, oh, a new game shows up and it's got gorillas with headphones on and you're flying over an airplane?
You know, we never did figure out why they're wearing headphones. I'm not quite sure.
So they could listen to this rad music while they were playing their trying to dodge the bombs that Mr. U is dropping. But I'm going to try and collect all these card suit characters. Yeah, so the graphic style is just crazy. Look, you've got kind of these low-resolution looking environments, but the objects, so like the Mr. U and the biplane and these card suit characters are super sharp looking. It's really wild. I'm going to go over here and collect this last card suit character and hopefully finish the stage. Oh, no. The clouds are also dangerous. That's important to note. All right, so I got that. If you turn your attention to the bottom of the screen there, you'll see these gorillas are really unhappy about having been captured. But that's just another example that this is a perfectly preserved artifact of the time in which it was produced. This has not been modified. This is an exact copy of what's in our archives. So we're going to start off the second stage here.
So I think you need to biff it really quick so we can see that.
Oh, right, yes.
I kind of want to see you crash because I think that's one of the cooler graphical elements.
I think if I just play this stage, the death will happen organically. I don't need to crash myself.
I may have jinxed you. Is it bad that I'm just rooting for you to crash?
Yeah. Well, no, the crashes are pretty spectacular, and I'm sure we'll see one here in just a minute. Oh, well, there we go.
There you go.
I took that a little too close.
Look at that.
Yeah, this is an amazing just piece of Nintendo history. And I'm really excited that it's finally getting out there, that people are finally going to have the opportunity to play this. And again, with online leaderboards. So, maybe try and set a world record in Sky Skipper.
Yeah, you might not have. No one has any practice on this game, really. So
yeah,
except maybe Don.
Right.
Yeah, I put a few hours on it when we had it in the warehouse.
Watch out for Don on those leaderboards.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for coming, Mr. James, and telling us a little bit about Arcade Archives, Donkey Kong and Arcade Archives Sky Skipper. The first-hand experience that you have with both of these titles is something that no one else can claim.
No, there's a couple other people, but they don't work at Nintendo anymore.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty cool that you've literally seen the release of every Nintendo game since Donkey Kong.
Yep. Every single platform, game. Well, it's been a incredible experience for 36 years to be part of this company and watch the innovation and the craziness that it is working in the video game industry.
Yeah, and I'm sure being here at E3 is it's one of those yearly, those yearly touchstones where we all come together and show our latest games off for the world.
I've been to every single E3.
That is a badge of honor.
I'm not sure if that's a badge of honor or shame. I'm not sure.
Well, that was great. So, going back to Arcade Archives Donkey Kong for a second, Don, do you have any info about when that will be released?
The greatest thing, I've got the pleasure of announcing that it's available right now, and you can download it today.
Right now! Arcade Archives Donkey Kong is available right now on Nintendo eShop. So get out there. Maybe if you know Donkey Kong well, try to put up some high scores. If you don't, like me, take some of those tricks Sam showed and maybe get yourself a new high score, because I didn't even know how to grab some of those points.
Yeah. As much as I've been playing Arcade Archives Donkey Kong, I'm still going to download it the moment I can, because it's not enough. A great game is great forever, and I'm going to be playing as much Donkey Kong as I can. As far as Arcade Archives Sky Skipper, that is going to be releasing on Nintendo eShop next month.
All right, so Arcade Archives Donkey Kong available right now. Arcade Archives Sky Skipper will be available next month. Once again, thank you to Sam for showing us those, putting in through the paces on those games, and Don James, Nintendo of America. Pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing some of that those deep cuts with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Nintendo Treehouse Live 83. We're going to be right back with a look at Starlink Battle for Atlas, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thanks.
His coconut gun can fire in spurts. If he shoots ya, it's gonna hurt. He's bigger, faster, and stronger too. He's the first member of the DK crew. DK, Donkey Kong. DK, Donkey Kong is here.
This Kong's got style, so listen up. This chicken shake gets off to her hood. She's quick and nimble when she needs to. Then she can book through the air and climb up trees. If you choose her, you're not choose wrong with a skip and a hot cheese. One good Kong. DK, Donkey Kong. It's back again. It's about time to win. This time he's in the mood. He can fly real high when this shit back on. With his pistols out, he's one tough call.
Hey everyone, we're back at Nintendo Treehouse Live at E3. We're going to take a look at Starlink Battle for Atlas. And to show off this game, we've brought some people that know this game probably better than anyone, our friends from Ubisoft. We have Matt, the producer for Starlink Battle for Atlas, and Laurent, the creative director. So really excited to have you guys and to sort of show us what you've been working on. I'm really excited to see what you guys have to show us. So
yeah,
please
thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah.
So Starlink Battle for Atlas is an open-world action-adventure game that's going to take you 400 light years away from Earth to the Atlas star system. And it follows the journey of a team called the Starlink Initiative who are blasting off there. And it features this really, really cool modular starship where every single piece that you put on instantly appears in-game and lets you adapt and reconfigure your abilities on the fly to take on any challenge.
It's so cool. I'm so excited.
So basically the game is based around this idea of a modular starship. So you can see here I got my Joy-Con on my Starlink mount, and the first thing you're going to want to do is plug in a character. So all of them have different abilities. So right here I'm going to take Mason Rana, who is in our story is the inventor of the Starlink technology. And you can slide him in, and as soon as you link it there, you can see it getting ready into action on the screen. And so the next thing that you're going to do is equip yourself with a starship. So they all belong to like different classes. This one belongs to like a high performance class, so it allows you to be extremely agile. So I'm going to connect it right now. And you can see it appears instantly in the game. I'm going to plug in some wings.
Yeah, probably need some wings. Look, I love that.
Yeah, it's an absolutely instantaneous connection. This is a technology we've built from the ground up with our team at Ubisoft Toronto. And there's actually a ton of flexibility with how you build. You can see, Laurent, you can take parts off, you can stack parts, you can reverse parts. Anything you build will be instantly recreated in-game. And not only does that change the appearance of your ship, that's also going to change your abilities and your stats and how your ship works in the game.
So the next thing to do after you build your starship is to link some weapons. So we're going to start with this Gatling here. It's a great medium range, high rate of fire weapon, and we're going to continue with the Frost Barrage here. Frost Barrage is great. You can deliver a series of homing missiles to our target, so that's pretty cool. So you're in the Atlas star system now, and you can go pretty much anywhere, but right now we are on a mission to track down a big unit from the Forgotten Legion, the enemy of the game, that we call the Legion Prime. So we don't know the location of the Prime, but we know that it just planted a big extractor on this planet, and it's destroying this planet. So we gotta destroy that extractor tower to be able to locate the Prime.
And I see you flying into the planet. I really like that you have that sort of that. You can obviously fly once you get to the planet, but flying into planets, I feel like, is a cool part of making that world feel big. And
yeah, absolutely. So this, just completely seamless travel from space down to the surface of planets, from planets back up to space. And there's tons of things to discover in space as well. Different points of interest and derelict spaceships and outlaw hideouts, all sorts of cool, fun things to discover.
I don't know if it'll work, but the extractor it planted, you need to go there.
And these planets are actually real, spherical, circumnavigable planets. So Laurent's currently landed on the night side of Sonatas, but he could fly completely around this sphere, go to the day side, discover different secrets and history and puzzles. These are absolutely massive open worlds.
Yeah, they look like vibrant ecosystems. I'm seeing foliage. I'm seeing some creatures running around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Each has its own unique flora and fauna. There's different factions that you can ally with, and you can actually, collect. So, for instance, the animals that you're seeing, you could go scan them, take DNA samples, and take that to the local scientist faction called the Expedition, who will help use that to craft mods to upgrade all of your gear.
That's really cool.
So right now I'm entering the electrical storm that is caused by this extractor tower. So we're going to land on the ground at any time. So you can fly in the game, of course, but at any time you can land and transition to skimming mode like this. This tower is protected by those Cyclopes from the Legion, so let's try to take them down. You can dodge left and right to avoid their projectiles. You can also jump like this, and if you hold the jump button, you're able to. Oh wow, this one's aggressive. So if you hold the jump button, you can hover a bit in the air like this. So that's very useful to avoid the attacks of the enemies.
There's actually a ton of depth to the combat, so I don't know if you're noticing, but Laurent is able to aim right at their eye to do extra critical damage, take those guys out. You have a shield, and if you time that shield just right, you can use that to parry their attacks as they come in, reflect them back at them. So it's one of those kind of things that's easy to learn and easy to get in, really accessible controls, but there's a ton of depth there to master.
That's really cool.
So right now I'm trying to take down this extractor node to get access to the main weak point of this extractor tower. So there it is. But the Forgotten Legion are trying to protect themselves, so I got to avoid their attack while taking down their buildings.
And the ship that Laurent's in right now is called Pulse, and this is, as Laurent mentioned, it's kind of a performance ship. It's really, really fast. It's really agile, but it doesn't have a ton of armor. So this is depending on your play style, your choice of which ship, which wings, which weapons you're using, will constantly evolve into something people experiment with and find kind of their preference.
And I imagine you might even want to switch out sort of different things depending on what enemy you're facing or what situation you're in.
Absolutely, yeah. So here, for